All right, so looking at this again, what I want you to do is just make a tally, whether you got it right or whether you got it wrong. Going through this right here, so it's just naming that property, and we'll see who's got the highest total once we're done. All right, so the first one, looking here, what you had to recognize was you had this 6, and then you did something to it in the parentheses to get the new piece. That's what it wanted you to look at. Well, the property that you used right there was the distributive property, okay? Because you took that 6 and you distributed it to the parentheses of 5x minus 9, all right? So the first one was your distributive property. All right, now, as I look at this next one, I see that there are 3 things on both sides, so that automatically alerts me that it's going to be the associative property. But then I have to figure out, what is it the associate property of? Well, here I look, it's the associate property of multiplication, because those are the signs that are being used throughout. But remember, it groups the last 2, then it groups the first 2. So here that's the associative property of multiplication. All right, the next one here, all right, these are the ones where you've got to truly understand what's happening. Well, you had a 6, and then what happened to it? You added a negative 6. Well, what is that property that gets it back to where it started? It undoes it. Somebody, which eye is it? There's 2 of them. There's 2 options. Which eye? Is it inverse? Is it identity? Which one? What are y'all saying? I'm thinking it's inverse, and I agree with you. All right, it is the inverse property, remember, because it undoes. So this one would be the inverse property of addition. Okay? Inverse property of addition. All right. Now, very similar to that, but kind of different, is look at this next one. You had 235 plus 0, which is equal to 235. Well, what you did here was you added something that doesn't change it. That is the other I, which is identity. So it is the identity property of addition. Okay, because here you're adding something that doesn't change the problem. All right, next one, negative 18 times 1 and stays negative 18. This is another example where you did an operation here, multiplication, but did it change your original problem? No, it didn't. So which one is that? We just talked about it. That is the identity. Okay? Spelled identity wrong. Identity property of, and this time it is multiplication. It is multiplication for the reason of you're using the multiplication operation. All right, here on the next one, how many things are being added? 2. So you know it's going to be the commutative property. Okay, but what is it the commutative property of? Yeah, adding, which is addition. Okay, here you just change the order of what you're doing. Negative 2 plus 4 is the same as 4 plus negative 2. Uh-oh, what about this exact next one? It is the same thing. It is the commutative property of addition, because once again you're just taking the order and flipping them around. It's only 2 of them. All right, what happens here in the next one? Y'all can start answering these if you think you know them. Yeah, it's the distributive property. Okay, the reason we know it's the distributive property is you take that 2 and it's got the nice pretty arrows for us, so it shows us as which one is going to what. Okay, here we're back to 2 things being flipped around, so we know again it is the commutative property, and again it is of addition because those 2 things are being added. So flipping them around in order, just need to know that it is being added together here. All right, next one, another one. You've got 15 times some number, which is 1, that leaves at 15. What is it called when you do not change it? Identity. The identity property doesn't change it. It's what you can multiply or add that won't change it. And here it is of multiplication, because you're multiplying by 1. Remember, you multiply by 1. You'll see an example. We saw one earlier when you add 0. Those are the identity. Okay? Ooh, looking at this one. There are 3 things being multiplied together, and all that changes are the groups. Well, remember, you associate with different people. So when your groups change, it's the associative property. And here it's the associative property of multiplication, because all 3 that are happening, the operation for all of them is multiplication. All right, so keep going here. Oh, here's one. Okay, we had a 6, we added something to it, it stayed 6. Okay, the property that doesn't change it is the identity property. And here's the example of addition. Okay, the reason we know it's addition, you add 0, but adding 0 doesn't change anything. Here, another one where we've got 3 different things. This time they're being added together instead of multiplied, but all they do is change the group. So that is another one that is the associative property, but this time it is of addition. Okay? I know we're going through these fast, but I just want to make sure you get them. Okay? Ooh, here's a good one. 6 times 0 is 0. What is anything times 0? 0. That is the multiply by 0 property. Anything times 0 will be 0. Okay, on your notes yesterday, it was the multiplicative property of 0. Either way, I know what you're talking about. You list that out. All right, here, 2 things, and the order is being switched. That is commutative. Remember how I remember that? Commutative has 2 M's, so when 2 items are getting switched around. But here's the commutative property of which operation? Multiplication. Yep, you're multiplying the 2 numbers, so the commutative property of multiplication. All right, ooh, here's a good one. This is a little bit different than we've ever looked at it. -3 plus a 3. So here we start with a negative number, but we're still adding something to undo it. What undoes things? The inverse property. And here again, it is the inverse property of addition, because you are adding something to undo it. Okay? Now, I gave you a hint when we were rolling through these earlier, right? This is one where you had a fraction, 5/7. You multiplied it by its reciprocal because it's flipped, and you ended up getting 1. Okay? That is something that undoes what the fraction was. So that is another example of an inverse property. And this time it's of multiplication, because it takes it back to what the identity property is. It takes it back to 1. Okay, these are semi-confusing. That's why we're getting a lot of practice with them. All right, they're also going to be questions on Friday. All right, here, what's going on? 5 plus 7 is equal to 7 plus 5. That's another commutative. And here it's property of addition. Okay, because all you do is flip those things around. All right, just a few more, almost done. Here, you got 3 things going wide again, so we know it's going to be the associative property. But we've got to figure out, is it the associative property of what? Well, what operation are we using? Yeah, addition. Okay, again, how I know that? 3 things being added. I just changed the groups that get added first. Okay? All right, here's another one. You have 2/3, but you multiply it by something that undoes it. That is the inverse property of multiplication again. Remember, it's undoing something, multiplying it by the reciprocal. Okay? And then the last one, 7 times 8 is equal to 8 times 7. We just switch those two around. It is the commutative property, but this time it is of multiplication. Okay? All right, so that was just kind of a little review game. That's something that you got to work on your own. Now, the next thing I'm about to give you is a little worksheet that if you do not finish is for homework. You don't have to turn it into Canvas, but it's good practice on making sure you know these because it's got to help prepare you for your quiz.